So let's take a look at what people are making of the new points of Warhammer 40K. We've got Space Marines, Tyranids, Orks and Blood Angels, all doing well in the first weekend since the balance update. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today I thought it would be interesting to check in and just take a look at a few examples of army lists that have done rather well in the first weekend since the balance update, focusing on a couple of big tournaments that use the new points. Obviously everything's super new at this point, it's going to be a period of experimentation to see what works and what doesn't, and while placings at any one tournament can be very dependent on luck and matchups and just the outright skill of certain players, I think taking a look at a bunch of top lists give us some idea as to what certain players are thinking with their factions, particularly after the update hits really quite a lot of the top armies of Warhammer 40k. With that in mind, I thought we could take a look at 8 top army lists, the top 4 placing from each event, and look at some of the armies and units that the best players around are having success with. First up, and perhaps a little bit on the unexpected side for some, are Ultramarines topping the biggest tournament of the weekend. This Ultramarines Vanguard by Ben Neal got first at the Big Denver Flight Club tournament with 100 odd players in. It is kind of interesting with tournament stats and things. The Space Marines were sitting on really quite a low win rate, but even though they didn't really get any significant help in terms of outright power, the fact that the Divergent chapters generally received nerfs for the most part might mean that a few more players attempted to play the actual core codex as one of the strongest options, and Ultramarines Vanguard is still a very scary army. Will be interesting to see whether or not this one's just a freak occurrence, with one skilled player doing very well, or whether things will look up a little bit, at least for the Ultramarines. I guess we know that things are going to be changing for them in some way come December. In any case though, this one uses a trio of Ultramarines characters and puts them in the Vanguard detachment. Uriel Ventris and Marnius Calgar tend to be staples. Cato Sicarius is more interesting though. The Vanguard has some nice movement shenanigans, some good extra toughness at long range, and the ability to put things back in reserve, which can be really big for things like the Centurion Devastators or Inceptors. Uriel Ventris looks like he's leading a unit of company heroes and giving deep strike to those Devastator Centurions, who was already dead efficient for doing that, and now he's got that command point debuff aura, which really added quite a lot to his disruption factor. Marnius Calgar goes with a now more expensive Apothecary Biologist with Blade Driven Deep, and they join some Eradicators. That means you've got a fairly terrifying unit that can advance and shoot with some massive anti-tank weapons and still handle itself in close combat very well, plus fall back and shoot. And it looks like Cato Sicarius is joining the other company hero squad in an Impulsor, allowing another tanky fighty character units to scout into the midboard, and then they've got a rather nice reactive 6-inch move, which could be really annoying with opponents trying to catch them up and fight over objectives with them. He's definitely a far rarer pick than the others, kind of cool to see him in a top list to be honest. Finally for the characters, there's a Combi Lieutenant with Shadow War Veteran, so another thing that can mess with enemy command points, really quite a big factor in this list between that and Cato Sicarius himself. Then beyond that we've got 2 units of Inceptors, one big one with Plasma and one small one with Bolters. Extra nice in this one with the ability to return to reserves, 1 unit of Infiltrators to hold the home field with Deep Strike Denial, and then 2 units of Scouts with Bolter and Chainsword. Pretty much always good in a Space Marine list, and I guess can run away a bit faster in this detachment if they need to with the stratagem. Overall it's pretty cool to see Codex Space Marines take down a tournament like this. Interesting to see Cato Sicarius being used. It will be fun to see whether or not this is the return of Ultramarines Vanguard to more regular competitive play, now that a bunch of the competitor chapters have taken big hits. Next up and second at the same tournament, we've got Tyranids with Synaptic Nexus, this one by Matt Evans, who used it to go 5 wins and 1 draw. Synaptic Nexus has tended to be one of the more competitive Tyranid detachments, but far less played than Invasion Fleets or Vanguard. This one really does take the great big psychic monster thing that it has going to fairly big extremes. The detachment buff is 3 turns worth of nice buffs, an invulnerable save and a couple of melee things, plus some pretty nice stratagems including a good damage dealer one where you reroll 1s to hit and wound, which can be pretty nasty on things like Norn Emissaries or Zone Throat Fire getting focused against one thing. Going through the threats, there's the Swarm Lord, who's more relevant here given that he's an enormous threat Synapse unit. He'll be generating some command points for the stratagems and debuffing the enemies. And Eurotyrant, I strongly suspect leading a big squad of 6 Zone Thropes. That one takes the power of the Hive Mind for an extra nasty Psychic Torrent attack, and buffs their shooting, plus allows them big guns never tire to fire in melee. There's then the Hive Tyrant, interestingly enough spec'd for close combat with Bone Swords and Scything Talons. I guess he'd make a rather nasty tag team with the Swarm Lord I suppose. He has Synaptic Control for the -1 damage, and he'd be quite good for buffing the Exocrines in the right matchup. There's a set of 3 of them with their very general purpose, big damage fire, and getting lethal hits on those can mean they really punch up against tough stuff. Finally for the big threats, there's 2 Norn Emissaries. Really big, tough and nasty. The buff to Synapse Strength meant they got up to Strength 10, which was quite a big break point for their melee attacks, and can be pretty nice users of a bunch of stratagems. I guess the Swarm Lord and the Hive Tyrant will make sure there's plenty of those going around. Then for scoring and support type things, there's Death Leaper, who's rarely a bad choice in the midfield. The fast moving lone operative that is the Parasite of Mortrex, and he takes the Dirge Heart of Karis. Interesting for a nice leadership debuff that could make a squad really quite likely to fail and have some fun interactions with a Neuro Tyrant, I suppose. And then a Lonely Biovore, who I'd guess would guard the home field and can spam out Spore Mines for board control and doing certain secondaries. Overall feels like a very fun list, very on theme with the Synaptic Nexus, and kind of interesting to see such a low focus on utility and support units besides a couple of lone operatives and a Biovore. Next up, we've got some Orks, and it seems it's the return of the Bully Boys detachment. I was wondering whether or not 35-point Mega Knobs would be enough for that, and it seems that the answer is yes, at least to get third at a big tournament like this. This Bully Boys formation was run by a Michael Mann, going 5 wins to 1 loss. Bully Boys is the one that gives you 2 turns worth of War, 4 Knobs, Mega Knobs, and anything led by a War Boss, and then a bunch of helpful stratagems that usually tend to be most efficient on Mega Knobs if anything. At 35 points, there's 3 units of 5 of them here, all with twin kill saws. Very scary damage outputs that'll do in most things besides big hordes, particularly in the turn of the war, and then they get very tanky with their 5+ feel no pains, even if they're not quite the power trip that they were when they were 30 points and 4+ feel no pain. They're each led by a war boss in mega armor, one of which takes a teleporter. That one could deep strike and rapid ingress if needed. There's then 2 regular bosses, one of which looks like they join a squad of knobs and one a squad of 20 boys with choppers and power claw. And it looks like all of that piles into a truck and 2 battle wagons besides the ones in deep strike. Battle wagons are enormously tough for the cost and trucks very efficient. The wagons take hard cases for extra toughness. It's also interesting that it looks like a big mech is joining the regular squad of boys. He's got a driller and a custom mega blaster, and I guess he's mainly there for a couple of extra big hitting attacks and a bit more of a reliable delivery into combat, being able to reroll advances and potentially move through models where needed. I guess alongside the war boss, those attacks will be pretty nasty against tough stuff, 3 of them at strength 12, hitting on a 2+ at strength 13 with AP 3 and damage 3. Otherwise, there's a unit of the new cheaper commandos at 120 points, nice for some infiltrating, early game pressure and ball control. 2 units of Gretchen to farm some command points and just generally be annoying 40-point units that can do actions and things, plus a whole bunch of objective control until they're dealt with. Boss Snickrot, who I guess would run solo, but I guess could join the commandos. I feel that's probably got more value as an Orky lone operative though. And finally a single unit of Storm Boys, often used for actions and objectives and things. Overall definitely feels positive for the Orks who have been struggling for a fair while now, and nice to see Mega Knobs playable, at least in the detachment that makes them far better. Finally, for the armies that I wanted to look at in this one, there was a Dark Angels Gladius task force run by Colin Kay, using it to take 4th, with 5 wins and 1 loss, and I must admit it was really quite a peculiar Dark Angels list. This one seems at least somewhat similar to a list that he'd run before to win a grand tournament, feeling like a bit of a high level play one with a massive focus on lone operatives, but interesting to see the adaptations after the data slate. Probably one of the most unusual things is literally no fire discipline combo whatsoever. Lots of Dark Angels lists were running Eradicators in a Repulsor, though it seems that, say, Hellblasters with a Lieutenant weren't good enough to make the cut, at least for this one. In any case, to go through things, there's 4 fairly fighty squads moving up on foot to fight for the midfield objectives, 2 big scary units of Inner Circle Companions who'll be able to blend most things, each of them headed up by Judas here. Fights first on quite that much murderous melee, it's going to give people problems. And then in addition to them, there's 2 units of Assault Intercessors, one headed up by Azrael for all the goodness that he brings, and one by a Captain with a Power Fist and the Honor Vehemence. I guess they can provide a fair bit of objective control, and with the Assault Intercessors rerolls be punchy enough to take down a bunch of stuff that they might otherwise struggle with. I'm guessing in support of them, we've then got Lionel Johnson himself, a massive great big heavy killing threat with fights first and lone operative protection, and there's loads of infantry in this one to trigger that. I wouldn't be too surprised to see him featuring in a lot of Dark Angels lists at 285. Then we've got 2 combi weapon lieutenants for yet more lone operative, and then a librarian and Phobos armor with 5 infiltrators, I guess usually to guard the home field, but also with the Phobos librarian they also have kind of lone operative, not being able to be shot outside of 12 inches. Finally though, and perhaps the most surprising thing, is that using up over a quarter of the points value are 3 whirlwinds. Seems like indirect firepower is often worth not bothering with or just going all in. With that much firepower no doubt backed up by Oath of Moment, you'd have enough strength 8 damage 2 things to take out a whole bunch of more normal sized infantry. and that feels pretty powerful paired with the rest of the stuff that you might not be able to shoot with lone operative or might be hiding. Definitely feels like you could shut down a bunch of options and stop opponents scoring. Overall definitely looks like one that would take loads of skill to play and doesn't really have that much survivability if any of the units get caught out, but a whole load of them just feel like they're a potential nightmare to deal with in their own ways. Next up, I thought we'd take a look at the Toronto Fall Open tournament, one of the other big ones that used their new points. This one was won by Real Space Raider Drukhrari by Riven Martinez, aka Scary from Scarredcast, who I'm sure will be breaking down his army list and run with it on his channel. It's kind of interesting that it's Real Space Raiders, which hasn't been played anywhere near as much as the Sky Splinter, though given a fair few of the nerfs fell on the transport style units. Maybe there's enough room for a bit more emphasis on things like Talos that might do a little bit better in the Raiders detachment. Otherwise though, he's taken one copy of just about the majority of units in the Codex, an Archon I'd guess with the Court, Lilith Hesperax with a bunch of witches probably in that Raider, and the regenerating monstrosity of Yuri and Rakath, who could potentially patch those pain engines back together if needed. Seems the Beastmaster's still here despite the points increase to 120 for some good scout moving and big disruption in the early game. We've got some Kabbalite warriors that could be great objective grabbers. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them was riding in a Venom perhaps. Lots of scoring good things like infiltrating mandrakes that can fade away, a fast moving squad of reavers, and some jump shoot jump scourges with haywire, a single ravager for some big dark lancefire, and then a whole bunch of pain engines, 2 Kronos that can farm pain tokens and are kind of ridiculously tough for their cost, 2 units of 3 Grotesques with liquefiers and monstrous weapons, and then 2 Talos with Talos Gauntlet, Liquefire and Haywire, fairly tanky big hitting damage dealers. In any case, a crazy amount of moving parts and options there. Certainly feels like the sort of list where it might be hard to have any one strategy to deal with a lot of it. And very cool to prove that Drukhrari can still do very well despite all the nerfs they just had, though admittedly I would chalk up a whole bunch of that to the player skill of Mr. Scary himself, who's not a particular stranger to topping tournaments with all sorts of unlikely things. Next up, we've got a far more straightforward and utterly horrendous looking list by Devin Swan, placing second at the tournament, and I quite enjoy the list title of Settlers of Catan. This one's a Hypercrypt Necron list, so big teleport shenanigans on offer, and this one just goes all in on the Star God spam, a Nightbringer, Deceiver, Void Dragon, and 3 Transcendent Catan, which is the sort of army that outside of a tournament I wouldn't be too surprised if a bunch of people declined to play. The Catan still haven't really got much less efficient since the Necron Codex came out. They rose in points a bit and they can't use the Cosmic Precision 3-inch Deep Strike stratagem, but can still get lots of value out of Hypercrypt, I guess particularly the Transcendent Catan with Deep Strike, or just pushing up onto the mid-board objectives and forcing the opponents to deal with their sheer mass. They're ridiculously tanky, with halving damage, feel no pain, regrowing wounds, and a solid invulnerable save. Most of the time they're just not really going to die too fast unless they're absolutely focused. And then they have a bunch of big damage. The Nightbringer and Void Dragon are very general purpose. The Deceiver's the tankiest given he's got stealth, plus is very efficient against elite infantry. And the Transcendents can teleport without using Hypercrypt if they don't want to charge, and again can mess up infantry at range and melee. To support them, there's some minimal characters, 2 Hexmark Destroyers, which could be nice to Hypercrypt around doing actions as you need them to, maybe holding a home objective if it's not contested. Interestingly enough, 1 Scorpec Lord, which is a bit random, but I guess he can hit quite hard in melee. Not too sure why the choice was him. Over a smaller squad of things, but I guess he's got a pretty scary stat line. And then there's a unit of 5 Immortals with Tesla Carbine. Maybe could be an interesting one to do gamey things with Cosmic Precision perhaps. It could be a good option for a unit to do the Battle Line Secret mission as well. Overall looks utterly horrendous, and I'm sure would win the damage game against the majority of armies. Still certainly not the easiest list to win at Grand Tournament level with though, both having to win the damage game efficiently and also rack up more victory points along the way without really that much objective control on the board. And if it was ridiculously easy, then I guess everyone would do it. I guess it is one scary list though that didn't really get nerfed at all in the big update. Next up we've got some Cornate Rage in the World Eaters, this one by Ryan Bell, and placed 3rd at the same tournament. I feel like out of all the armies this one maybe feels one of the most similar to perhaps the Cookie Cutter World Eaters list prior to the update. I guess they didn't really have the most enormous changes ever, Angron going up a bit along with the Master of Executions, but Angron still seems pretty awesome to me, and seems that the Master of Executions was still good enough to make the cut here. Going through it, we've got the Red Angel himself, who can threaten first turn charges, have a good chance to revive on death, and great focus for any stratagems, Lord Invocatus, who can have exalted 8-bound scouting, or other unit scouts to do objective things if needed, and then can be a nuisance solo threat in his own right, a Master of Executions, who I'd guess will be leading the big unit of Khorne Berserkers in the Rhino. he takes the Berserker Glaive and is still a massive great big melee threat to make them far more relevant against tough stuff, and just having a big scary squad with both fights first and a surge move is pretty unpleasant to deal with for certain armies. There's then a smaller unit of Khorne Berserkers, I guess maybe trying to move up a bit more stealthily behind ruins or something. 2 units of regular 8-bound with the Lacerators on the champion, who can scout them themselves and are pretty good for deleting most medium-sized infantry units. A big unit of 6 Exalted 8-bound and 1 unit of 3, they'll be far better at taking down the toughest enemy vehicles about. And then for secondaries and actions and things, there's 2 units of Jackals and 1 set of 2 Spawn. Nice for grabbing objectives and being sacrificial, potentially if they're gunned down, triggering sticky objectives. There's plenty of icons as well that should allow you some good rerolls on the Blessings of Khorne table. Overall, this one's not really too changed from the previous. I guess it's not like World Eaters have got a crazy amount of options, but still seems that their more standard list is pretty effective. Finally, last but not least, we've got one of the first tournament outings for the Blood Angels with their new Codex points. Their Liberator Assault group here placed 4th, and this one goes heavy on the heroes of the chapter. Between the points and the damage output, it still looks like Death Company are indeed scary enough to make the cut. There's 2 big units of 10 of them. In the unit you can take 2 Fists and 3 Eviscerators now. One's headed up by the much improved Asterath, and the other takes the slightly cheaper but still rather excellent Lamates for the -1 damage and the lethal hits. I guess despite not having full Inferno Pistols and full Power Fists, there's still a unit that will threaten to just outright kill probably the majority of units you might come across in Warhammer 40K if they go in with Red Rampage, and seems that Asterath is scary enough to be included. Now he gets devastating wounds with every charge and has a much improved melee profile. Then for a third, just utterly dangerous threat, we've got Dante with 6 Sanguinary Guard. They take the Oncarmin Blades, 2 Inferno Pistols and their banner. They've got a full squad of high AP damage 2 weapons, so particularly nice against taking out any medium infantry, but with a 400 point devastating assault unit there, they should be able to do horrendous damage to whatever they charge. Then it seems that the captains are still out in force. There's 2 regular Blood Angels captains, each leading a squad of assault intercessors, jumping out of impulsors with shield domes. They've typically been a big staple, and these ones are embracing being able to take an Inferno pistol. It looks like the Fight's First enhancement was left at home for this one. Instead there's the icon of the Angel to trigger some desperate escapes, and the Rage-Fueled Warrior for sustained hits 3 once per battle. I guess that worked out nicely enough with the captain, as he could trigger it on his big attacks round and have a pretty reasonable chance of getting at least 1 6. Then for secondary objectives, we've got 2 units of Jump Intercessors, still excellent for the Blood Angels despite being 90 points. They can drop in and do actions and still outright delete smaller units with their massive amount of Strength 6 attacks. There's a unit of Infiltrators to hold the home field with their Denied Deep Strike, and then finally there's Chief Librarian Mephiston. I feel like he's going to be a popular one with his just all around scary stats, good damage, good defense, good movement and fights first, all on a lone operative for 125 points. Certainly feels like it's hard to go too far wrong with him between his utility, backed up by very good damage for a lone operative. Certainly cool to see the Blood Angels have some success on their first outing. Will be cool to see some other people's takes on their army lists in later weeks. In any case, I found that interesting just to take a look through a bunch of army lists that have done pretty well over the first weekend. It's still very early days yet, of course. Let me know your thoughts on what was used or any other things that you might expect to be doing well in later weeks. Definitely cool to get a taster of some people's thinking though. If you want to see a bunch of the lists from the first half of the video live in action, I believe they appeared on Wargames Live as well, so feel free to check that out. In any case, I'll leave that there for this one. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'll certainly be keeping the 40k videos coming just about every day. Finally, if you've been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description if you'd like to help support and keep these coming. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.